Welcome to ESI Africa Insights. And for this episode, I'm speaking to Billy Onyango, who's the County Operations and Maintenance Engineer of Kenya Power. Billy, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, in terms of network modernization, what is Kenya Power's grid plans and focus to bring stability to the network?
I think that question is twofold. The operational initiatives to be able to improve reliability, but there are also some network developments to improve stability. So on operations, we are working on an automated distribution management system that has already been rolled out in Nairobi, which is the biggest load center. And it's also going to be rolled out in the other major load centers. So basically, there are 3 other big cities. Basically, the system is supposed to assist with automating the fault-finding process of operations in case there's a fault, and this will improve the reliability, basically the stability of the network, and also reduce on the unserved energy of the company. On the still operational front, there's also a drive to automating the substations, basically connecting all the substations on SCADA. At the moment, it's at 95%, which is quite progressive, and it's something that Kenya is hoping to achieve in the very near term, to have all the substations on the SCADA network. This, again, is just to support operation. But now on the stability end, the constraint on the Kenyan grid at the moment is not so much generation as it is transmission. And there are some network bottlenecks, especially taking power to the western part of the country, which has very little generation, as much as we have a lot of generation in the central and the lower part of the country. So this bottleneck has been causing a lot of grid interruptions, especially to do with the balance of power, generation versus demand. And at the moment, there are 2 major transmission lines being built to be able to evacuate the power from the geothermal complex in Olkaria, a place called Naivasha in central Kenya, to the western part of the country, which at the moment only has 2 generation stations, basically hydro, which, as you know, are very seasonal. So these are projects that were in the transmission plan, but stalled because of project delays. And Kenya Power, as much as is not in charge of transmission, has taken up the 2 specific projects as an emergency to be able to fix that bottleneck and now give the grid a bit of stability.
Okay. Now, if you look at East Africa region, now Kenya is the leading off-grid solar uptake, with solar home systems, etc. But what about grid-tiered solar and utility scale projects?
Thank you. It is true that a lot of home systems and mini grids have been developed in Kenya, but at the same time, we've also had a number of utility scale solar projects. At the moment, we have 4 major solar utility scale projects. All of them are 40 megawatts. So that brings our installed solar grid capacity to about 200 megawatts, representing about 15 or thereabout, between 10 and 15% of the installed capacity. So these are projects that are already online and part of our energy mix. If you look at our generation capacity, our share of solar in the last financial year, it was about 10%. So on the grid utility scale, that is where the country is. On now a grid-tied system, so basically these are captive power installed by industry individual customers. The Energy, Petroleum and Regulatory Authority in its latest report reported that they have approved and have currently installed 400 megawatts worth of captive solar power. So these are basically installed by individual industries, and that represents about 20% of the installed capacity of the electricity in Kenya. Now, I think it is important for us to understand the significance of this number. Because when you say we have 400 megawatts of installed captive power in the grid, the assumption would be that that is what you're offsetting from the national generation. But we all know that this is, in fact, about 100% of that 400 megawatts is on solar, and it's intermittent and it doesn't generate throughout. So if you statistically take a company that operates 24 hours, only 30% of its installed capacity will be offset from the grid. So when you're talking about 400 megawatts, as much as it represents 20%, then 30% of that is only what is felt by the grid. So at the moment, it is still small in terms of a small percentage of our installed capacity, but a lot of regulation and drive from the regulator and the government is meant to encourage uptake of captive power. There's obviously caution to be exercised while doing this, because it introduces another challenge of grid stability on the grid. And while there are quarters that will advocate for basically limiting the amount of captive power that is coming to the grid, in the drive to the energy transition, this might appear counterproductive. Therefore, in my opinion would be then to increase the generation capacity of the country so that the captive power becomes a smaller percentage. Because the issue here when you're talking about stability is the percentage of the variable renewables versus the total installation grid. So how do we increase the generation? Because we need to also grow the load at the same time. I think this is what the role that hydrogen will play in Kenya. Because Kenya has a potential of geothermal potential of about 10,000 megawatts against an installed capacity right now of the entire grid of 3,100 megawatts. So we can see this is quite a big potential, and geothermal itself is renewable and very viable in Kenya. So this should be able to drive hydrogen generation in Kenya for both power generation and fertilizers, and use it basically as an anchor load to be able to increase the capacity of our grid and therefore make it more stable, even in the advent of increased captive power. You've seen in most countries where hydrogen projects are being implemented, they're being implemented alongside a renewable source. So we build a power plant or a wind farm, and then to be able to power the electrolysis stations for hydrogen conversion. So this is an advantage that Kenya has, because already our grid is 80%. We have yet more potential for geothermal that can support the hydrogen production. And it is basically location proof. You can put the hydrogen plant anywhere in the country, regardless of where the energy source is, because the transmission network as well has been upscaled. Towards the coast, there's a 400 kilovolts line that has been commissioned recently, and the line was built a while back. It has been operated at 220 kilovolts, but the substation in Mombasa has already been commissioned. So this allows us to evacuate all the power from our generation stations, mostly in the central part of the country, to the coastal part, which will be ideal for setting up of this hydrogen plant. Yeah.
Thank you, Billy. And thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, have a powerful day.